you all on the occasion of the National Science Day and from the Indira Gandhi National Open University. As you're all aware, this day, from this date, 28th of February is celebrated as the National Science Day to commemorate the discovery of the Raman effect, and for which the physicist Sir C.V. Raman was awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1930. The day is celebrated with the aim of spreading awareness about science, its applications in human life, and to promote innovation and science. This year, the day is celebrated with the theme Integrated Approach in Science and Technology for a Sustainable Future. I'm happy that the IGNOU Regional Center Bhopal and the National Center for Innovations in Distance Education are jointly organizing this online talk on the occasion of the Science Day. And we are very proud to have Dr. Chinmoy Kumar Ghosh with us, our distinguished speaker and guest for the day. Before I call him and before I introduce him to all of you, although he does not require an introduction and is known to many of us, most of us, before that, I call upon Dr. O.P. Sharma, the Director of the National Center for Innovations in Distance Education, to address the gathering. Dr. Sharma, please.
Thank you, Dr. Vinny Thomas. Of you, respected Dr. Ck Ghosh, Dr. Thomas, and of our center and the study centers, and Dr. Ansuman Padya, students who are participating in this program. I welcome you all for this very important session on developing scientific temper. As Dr. Vinny has informed you, this day is the discovery of Raman effect that is now well known to all the people. More light than what is the purpose of this. In fact, Raman effect is a very important discovery by (1930). Long back, more than the National Council of Science and Technology. At time, how to recognize, how to give proper to Sir C.V. Raman, and nothing was enumerate or discovery by him. And since that day was very important, 28th February, on which that day is a very important day. It was the world. The basic observing this day as a National Science Day was basically to, though the Nobel Prize, but develop a scientific in general. So developing this scientific attitude, or we can say the scientific temperament, that was the becoming the students particularly. And since then, a variety of activities are being organized, particularly on this day. And now it has become a practice to organize such activities throughout the year also. For this week is now being celebrated by the Vigyan Prasar as a very important week to by organizing different type of activities, technological applications in society. And the basic objective of that is not only to provide the knowledge of science and technological concepts and theories and rules, but also to encourage or to motivate the people toward the use of method of science in their day-to-day life, and to develop a scientific attitude and think in that way, in a rational way. First and primary thing is to have a that scientific bent of mind. you should have that understanding, you should have that kind of mindset. Then only you can think of something new and innovative and different. Curiosity to know something more about the things happening around you, that is very important. And when you talk about the curiosity, then only we can talk about the innovation and invention. Problems also come across, like a pandemic came during the face problems. That also is basically that we are going to discuss today. Basically, how to develop that scientific temperament. I think that will be very important to listen to Dr. Ghosh, and we would like to link that scientific temperament with our day-to-day life problems, with our business problems, innovation and innovation and inventions that could be done by the IGNOU students and by the faculty. So with that aim in mind, we Ghosh. Without talking much, I would like to request Dr. Bini Thomas to invite him, and we will be happy to listen his thoughts. Thank you. Thank you very much. You are mute.
Background to our program today, and also mentioning in brief about today. I once again welcome all of you. There are many seniors on our among our participants today. I can see Professor D.S. Bhattacharya after a very long time. Very happy to see him. Welcome, sir. And also our colleagues from IGNOU, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, Dr. Bapat, and of course, Dr. this program and planned it along with Dr. Sharma. So very happy to have him join here, and welcome, sir. I hand over the platform to Dr. Ghosh for his much-awaited talk. A very brief introduction about him. Dr. Chinmay Kumar Ghosh has retired from the Indira Gandhi National Open University, the Student Support Services of the Regional Service Division of the National Center for Innovations in Distance Education and the Regional Centers of West Bengal and Sikkim. He is a teacher of physics and has taught at the Scottish Church College, Kolkata, and also at IGNOU. He did his PhD from the Calcutta University in thin, solid films while working as a scholar of CSIR at the Indian Association for Cultivation of Science. He has co-authored 11 books, 4 in the area of physics at the UG level, 1 on innovations in distance learning, and 6 as volumes on general knowledge. He has more than 100 publications, primarily in the areas of physics and mathematics education and open and distance learning in the form of research papers, articles, and edited literature at national and international levels. He has been holding membership of statutory bodies of different universities. After retirement, he has served as consultant at the National Institute of Open Schooling, Center for Educational Technology of IIT Kharagpur, and is currently associated with several projects of the NCERT. Briefly putting it, and with these words, without wasting any more time, I call upon our expert speaker and distinguished guest for the day, Dr. Ck Ghosh, to address the gathering and deliver his talk on the subject, development of scientific temper. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Honorable Dr. Toms, thank you at IGNOU. Nice to see you there, and dear participants. I deem it a rare privilege for getting this opportunity to talk on the topic development of scientific temper, and that also on this very auspicious day, National Science Day. And my greetings to all of you on this very day. As Dr. Sharma has already pointed out that, and Dr. Toms also, that this commemorates the discovery of Raman effect, and from that day, and from that day, it has been observed as the National Science Day. And C.V. Raman has been the one my PhD research, and 90 day is being observed same institution, that is Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, from where Sir C.V. Raman did his research. And on some occasion, he was asked that India has not been able to produce any further Nobel laureate in science. In fact, we have produced persons like Hargobind Khurana or Chandrasekhar, but then they were not citizens of India. And one of the observations made by Sir C.V. Raman was that perhaps we learn things, but we don't learn by doing. We accept things theoretically, but then we don't taking a backward step doing science very singular thing is definitely a reflection of scientific temper. And that's why, in order to commemorate C.V. Raman's discovery, I thought that this development of scientific temper can be a very apt topic for discussion today. So I'll just share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
So this is my topic, development of scientific temper. Now I take you to the Constitution of India, and this is clause 51A item H of the Constitution of India, that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to develop the scientific temper, humanism, the spirit of inquiry and reform. I was recollecting these terms while listening to Professor Singhvi in the program organized by IGNOU on the National Science Day. And this word scientific temper also figures in the preamble of our Constitution. You know that our Constitution has a very big history, particularly its framing by the Constituent Assembly, which shows how collective effort can bring out a set of rules for a country which was devastated because of the imperialism and the colonial rule. And there has been constitutions of different countries, but I am not aware of the constitution of any particular country which has given so much emphasis on scientific temper, spirit of inquiry, and of course humanism and reform. So I take this to be our guiding issue for the topic development of scientific temper. Now, let me ask this question: that do we have the attitude for doing justice to this unique feature of Constitution? Because we tend to be superstitious. Aren't we superstitious? We have a tendency to abandon our work plan if a black cat crosses our path when you are on our way to execute the task. You move out from your house and you find a black cat crossing your road. You don't go for undertaking that task. We do not eat during the occurrence of an eclipse. We are not supposed to cut nails after sunset. Several buildings do not use 13 as the floor number. Likewise, an airline, I remember, did not have the 13th row in their aircrafts. Many of us, while making a donation, add 1 to a round figure. Well, you can add to this list. You can keep adding to this list. And that will perhaps make us ashamed of how superstitious we are. And then about the dogmas. Are we under the influence of dogmatic beliefs? We face contradictions as regards the origin of life. Modern biology tells us that life has evolved from the earth from non-living things, whereas religious belief is that life emerged as the creation of God. Now, more than the belief, more than the brainstorming or the possibilities of brainstorming on such belief and the thoughts and the debates. Well, the crucial thing about dogma is that it is an opinion or a tenet accepted entirely on the basis of faith. Questioning is not allowed at all by the adherents of dogma. So this is something which is very crucial and in a way little dangerous. Questioning is not allowed at all. Whereas questioning happens to be the hallmark of scientific temper. There cannot be any high priest in science who cannot be questioned. And when I say science, I don't mean science per se, I do not mean hard science, but I mean the overall existence. We see so many things happening around us, and we have every right to question things around us, and that is a reflection of scientific temper. Now, epitomizing scientific temper, that's how I epitomize scientific temper. You can see the photograph of Galileo on the Italian currency note. This is because of the tribute they pay to their scientist Galileo of 17th century. He was born in the same year as that of William Shakespeare, that is 1564, and he passed away in the year 1642, the same year Sir Isaac Newton was born. So I consider him to be the father and he had invented a device with which we can see and we can tell beforehand if Italy is under the threat of any attack or not. So that was the recognition about Galileo. That was the recognition about the device which he was used. But then the people of the charge, they became careful and they became somewhat cautious, or I should say pseudo cautious, when Galileo had pointed it towards the cosmos. In fact, there was surveillance on Galileo after the dusk, after the sunset. But then Galileo was fearless and he did so. He did point his telescope towards the cosmos and rest is history. In fact, you know that the first recorded event of him observing the cosmos through his telescope happened in 1609, and the year 2009 was observed as the International Year of Astronomy, not to commemorate anybody's birthday or not to commemorate any discovery, but to commemorate 400 years of rationality, 400 years of rational thinking, that seeing is believing. And that's why I consider Galileo's telescope as the most crucial device, as the epitome of scientific temper. And see what we did with the telescope. Now I'm going to narrate you an incident which happened in the same year in which the government of India has declared this to be the National Science Day. In 1986, Halley's Comet had come close to the horizon. You know that it comes every 75, 76 years. The next occasion will be in the year 2062. I'll definitely not be there to observe this rare cosmic event. And I know of a person who had seen Halley's Comet twice in his lifetime. He passed away in the 1994. He had seen Halley's Comet in 1910 and of course in 1986. And in 1986, it was definitely got the stature of a cosmic event, but perhaps not the stature of a cosmic spectacle, because it was little far and the tail was off. The tail of the comet, which glows brightly, was off on a different side of the sun, and so you needed a telescope to observe the comet. Now, it had to be on the horizon and the closest proximity for about 3 to 4 nights, and I had naturally planned to go towards the vantage position. And from Kolkata, the vantage position nearest was Diamond Harbour, a place called Diamond Harbour. Those who are aware about the geography of Kolkata would be knowing about that place. And then, of course, I wanted to take a telescope. I was teaching at a college that time, and the students of my college were excited. They said that, "Sir, we'll go with you. You show us the Halley's Comet." I said, "How can I show you the Halley's Comet? Pray for a clear sky, and we have to take the telescope." Now, the telescopes that was available in the physics laboratory were little small telescopes, say with diameters of about 1.5 inch or 2 inch or so on and so forth. Now, one of our laboratory assistants told me that there is a store. It's a very old college where I was teaching. Shami, there is some disturbance somewhere. Someone has to mute the microphone. There is some disturbance somewhere. Right. So it was an old college. In fact, stalwarts like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Swami Vivekananda had studied in that college. It's quite old college, and there were different instruments, different devices in a store just dumped there. And one of those devices was a telescope. This was told to me by one of our laboratory assistants. He was very keen in doing experiments. Uh, and then, with some effort, we could bring out that telescope that had an 8-inch diameter, 8-inch diameter telescope, and I could uh, direct it to different objects, and it was a fantastic experience. And so I cleaned it, was lying in that store for a long time. I cleaned the lens from the fungus and all, and the vision became very, very clear. Of course, this had to be taken to Diamond Harbour, which means that it had to be taken outside the premises of the college. And so I had to take the permission of the principal. And when I went to take the permission of the principal, he didn't agree. He said that, "Dr. Ghosh, you cannot take the device outside the college. There is a rule of the college and you cannot take it outside the college." Now, my question is about the rule. This instrument was lying there unused, uncared for, and then I got it, I cleaned it, I made it usable, and this was the occasion for using the telescope, but we were not allowed. So this is lack of scientific temper. Of course, I could definitely have a connect with the Positional Astronomy Center, which was quite active, and it is still active in Kolkata. And then me and my students had a very good view of the Halley's Comet. But the tragedy is that we could not take our own telescope out there to the site because of which I call lack of scientific temper. So see the contradiction, how Galileo used the telescope and how we did not use the telescope, which tells a lot about scientific temper. Then the other occasion, which reminds me, is the total solar eclipse. This is a fantastic view of the solar corona, the unknown sun. You do not see such a sun every day, and it occurs very rarely. It's a very, very rare phenomena, total solar eclipse. In the recent years, during the past more than 4 decades or so, it has happened 4 times in India, which is quite great. And it's not only the solar corona when you can see the solar atmosphere, because the solar disk gets covered by the moon and the solar atmosphere, the solar flare can be seen. And then the diamond ring. Well, the fantastic effect on the sky, those who have seen it, it's a lifetime experience. It's giving me goosebumps. In fact, when this is called the second or the third contact. The first contact is when the eclipse begins, that's a partial eclipse. The second contact is when the totality begins, and third contact is when the totality ends, and the fourth contact is when the eclipse ends. Now, during the second and third contact, a patch of light from the sun comes out from the ridges on the surface of moon, ridges between, say, two mountain peaks, sort of mountains peaks. And when it comes out, well, you can still see the solar corona, and the point from which the glaring sun rays come out look like a bright diamond ring. There cannot be a better name than that, and this is called the diamond ring. Now, why I am showing these two photographs? Because this photograph of the solar corona and the diamond ring to sensitize you about the fact that it's a cosmic spectacle. But and it happened on these 4 dates during the last 4 days. 24th October 1995 was about 2 minutes. We got, and the next occasion will be 2168. So I don't know in how many when behind the of our lifetime we will be able to see the next occurrence of total solar eclipse over India. So it is such a rare event, and you might be knowing among several other experiments, experiment to prove the validity of the general theory of relativity of Albert Einstein also happened on a total solar eclipse. Experimental observation and every other such technical experiment has been So this is 10. So these two together becomes 10 to the power of 4. And this square, so this is 10 to the power of 10. 10 to the power of 5 squared, so this is 10 to the power of 10. So altogether this is 10 to the power of 14. So area of earth is about 10 to the power of 14. Surface area of earth is 10 to the power of 14 meters square. And if I am worried about my house, say which is above an area of say 10 meter by 10 meter, so this is the base area of my house, so its roof will have an area 100 meters square. So again here let us perform the probability calculation. So it would be 100 divided by 10 to the power of 14. So it is, so the probability of skylab debris hitting my house is 10 to the power of minus 12. It's a crude calculation, but I'm making a rough calculation. It is 10 to the power of minus 12. And so you compare these two figures. It is, so the probability of myself getting involved in an accident is 10 to the power of 6 times more. See, see the figure, it is about 10 to the power of 6 times more than the probability of my house getting hit by skylab debris. So if I'm afraid of skylab debris, I better not move out for work. Of course, nowadays it is work from home. That's a different story altogether. But once things become normal, you should not go out of your home if you are afraid of skylab debris hitting your house, or say an asteroid mass. We time and again we get to know this information that a part of an asteroid is coming and it's going to hit the earth at one particular point. So if you are scared of that, you should not go out for work. So this is all these things are happening because we don't question. Questioning is an art. Questioning is a skill, and in our classes we are mostly taught answering skills. We are not taught how to raise questions. In fact, this is a kind of an imaginary story. There was a fight between question and answer as regards superiority, that who is superior. Now the answer argued that, well, answer showed his muscle, that yes, I am superior because with my help you keep unlocking the mysteries. You keep unlocking the mysteries with my help. But then the question told answer that if I were not there, would you have existed? If I was not there, then answer would not have existed. And in fact, I remember that in our school we had a mathematics hobby club, and one of our important, interesting pastime was to solve puzzles. So we had done puzzles of great puzzlists, American puzzlists, Sam Lloyd and others. And we would definitely feel excited when we were able to solve a puzzle. But then our mentor would tell us that think how intelligent the person is who had framed the puzzle. Because you had a framework. You had a framework on which you started thinking, and maybe you were able to crack the answer. But the person who had framed the puzzle had to know it. So he has a more brilliant mind than you. And that's why question is definitely superior than answer. And our teachers should take care to develop the skill of questioning among the students. And there were questions galore. Well, this gentleman had questioned. Einstein had questioned when even when he was a young boy, he would get awestruck looking towards a magnetic compass and ask the question to his father that why is it always pointing towards the same direction. He even asked this question at his school, and he did not get any satisfactory answer. And not only that, he was snubbed by his teacher. In fact, the principal of the school had summoned Einstein's father to tell him that your son does not have any future. So think of the assessment made by the principal of the school about a person who later came to be known as the person of the century. You might be knowing that in the year 1999, an opinion poll was made by the Times magazine to find out who is the most important person of the century, and Einstein came at number one. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, not Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt came second, and of course we can take some pride because the third person was Mahatma Gandhi. Anyway, coming back to Albert Einstein, so he had questioned. You heard in Mr. Sharkar's lecture that C.V. Raman had questioned during his sea voyage. Well, he wanted to know that why is the color of the ocean blue, and he was not satisfied with the explanation of Lord Rayleigh. Lord Rayleigh did explain the blue of the sky, but the image or the reflection of the blue of the sky in the ocean makes it looks blue. He was not happy with that, and then he performed his experiments with molecular scattering, and the rest is history. Isidore Rabi, the famous nuclear physicist who won the Nobel Prize in the year 1944. Now, whenever he would return home, his mother would ask that, son, have you asked a good question today? So this is remarkable. The training and the mentoring comes from none other than his mother, that you should be raising questions. So questioning is the reflection of one's scientific temper. And in fact, it should not be the monopoly of the scientists or the researchers in science or the teachers of science or the students of science. It cannot be. It is a life skill, and questioning an event, questioning an occasion, questioning something happening is the reflection of scientific temper. And here you can see a person whom you cannot definitely call a scientist, but then he had tremendous scientific temper. In fact, he wrote his famous essays on science, Vishwa Porichaya, which he had dedicated to Professor Ck Ghosh. Now, I remember I might have shared this story with many of you. I had been to Shantiniketan number of times, and many of you might have been there also. Now, in the main museum there, that is the Ravindra Museum, which is the most important place to visit there. It has an annexy building where there is a library, and all the books there are getting digitized. And among those books are those books which have been read by Tagore as a child or as a young adult. And in all books, almost in every page, you will find Tagore making a comment. And this again gives me goosebumps. When I was browsing through a particular book on science read by Tagore, and it was written by a famous teacher of that time, Charuchandra Bhattacharya. Now there, Tagore has written on a chapter on electromagnet that na dekhle bojhvar upay nahi, vishwas karar upay nahi, that I cannot believe it unless I see it. About electromagnet, he writes, I cannot believe it unless I see it. So this is scientific temper, and as I told you, it cannot be the monopoly of students and researchers in science or teachers of science. It's all pervasive. Swami Vivekananda had asked questions. And again, I'm not going into the issue of the question. When he was going to every sage and he was asking them one question, and a very direct question: have you seen God? And everywhere he was getting the answer in negative. And then he goes to Dakshineshwar, meets Ramakrishna Paramahansadev, and again raises a question, and again a very direct question: have you seen God? And when he gets the answer in affirmative, well, Pat comes the next question: can you show me? Now, I'm not going into the issue of the question, any kind of religious belief or spiritual thought, but one thing which I would like you to appreciate is the directness of the question. Mahatma Gandhi did not perform experiments by picking up acids and alkalis from the shelf of a chemistry lab, but he did so from human existence, and he has narrated them in his Experiments with Truth. So, time and again, what I mean to say is that it is not the monopoly of the scientists or the researchers and the students of science. So let us ask ourselves, by us I mean, in fact, I know that I am talking mostly to teachers and there will be students. So this question I'm asking to the teachers. By ourselves, I'm meaning teachers. That do we encourage questioning? And why teachers, even students? Do we encourage questioning? Now, let us reflect on one particular situation which happens in our science laboratory. In fact, all the science subjects, particularly my subject area, physics, well, I'm afraid that they are getting relegated to a theoretical subject. Laboratories happen very seldom, and things have become worse during this pandemic. Well, even during the normal situation, and this particular comments I have made keeping in view the normal situation, I have not kept the pandemic in mind. Now, in the laboratory, the learners perform routine tasks. Now, why I am doing an experiment? I am doing an experiment for experiential learning. Now, I go to perform an experiment, and my first tendency will be to ask my friend who had done this experiment prior to me, that what were the results you got? What were the readings you had taken? Why so? The learners perform routine tasks. They do not exhibit open mind towards experiment. Let me perform the experiment. Let me see what happens. Let me take the results and analyze them. And most crucially, they use the laboratory notebook at home. They take the laboratory notebook and they don't use it in the laboratory. See, the name of the book is Laboratory Notebook. If you bring those bound notebooks, the title of the book is Laboratory Notebook, whereas it is not used in the laboratory. What we do, we take reading on a so-called rough notebook and then come back home and copy those readings from the rough notebook to the fair notebook. The laboratory notebook is a fair notebook, and they are told by the teachers that it has to be kept very neat and clean. Your seasonal marks will be given on the basis of that. Fair notebook is a notebook which is very what we actually do, and this has been criticized by a famous teacher of practical physics. These are not my words. This has been spelled out by G.L. Square, Squire, G.L. Square, a famous teacher of practical physics, who says that down with copying. Copying is a wastage of time, right? You can come back home and do other studies, but you are spending time of copying things from one notebook to another notebook. It's a wastage of time. There is every possibility of committing mistakes while copying. When we are copying, we may commit mistakes. And the third thing is very crucial. There is an irresistible temptation of being selective. I'm doing an experiment with Ohm's law. I know that all the data will come on a straight line. This is the IV characteristic of Ohm's law. This is I, this is current, this is voltage, and the points will fall on a straight line. Now, these are my experimental observations. And a few other observations are like this. Now, when I record in the fair notebook, I conveniently remove these points. Why? Why so? Because these were observations taken by me. So I'm doubting, and I'm judging the observations which have taken my own eyes. This is utter scientific dishonesty. So we tend to be extremely selective. As I told you, that there is an irresistible temptation of being selective. So what should be done? We should use a laboratory notebook inside the laboratory. Maybe certain data have come erroneous. You can strike through. That does not make the notebook that much untidy, and go over to the next page and take new data. So use the laboratory notebook. Be true to the word. Ramakrishna Paramhamsadev used to say in Bangla, "Amra bhaber ghore churi kori." We perform theft in our realm of thought. We say that it's a laboratory notebook and we are not using it in the laboratory. That is not science. Mr. Singhvi was making reference to such thoughts which crop up in our mind. So copying is a wastage of time. And let me narrate two experiences. In fact, we had to take practical classes of the higher senior secondary students, and many of you will remember that there is a relation like this, that specific gravity corrected is equal to specific gravity observed. C is for corrected and O is for observed, into rho T. Rho means density of water at T degree centigrade, and T degree centigrade is the room temperature, that is 30 degree centigrade. Now what happened? So what he did, he multiplied by rho t, and now here t is a suffix. And the textbook which he was using, there t appeared not as a suffix but just beside t, appearing that rho and t are getting multiplied. Now rho is the density of water, which is roughly 1 gram per cc, and t is 30 degrees centigrade. And he was not a good student. He should have known that this brings in a odd kind of dimension, whereas specific gravity is a dimensionless quantity. He should have applied his mind. But I can't help but respect his honesty and see 30 into 1.09 is 32.7. So basically, because of this printing mistake in his book, the printing should have been t at the suffix, but t came just beside rho, and due to this printing mistake, he performed this mistake, and time and again he was insisting to show us, but we were impatient and we were not trying to listen to him. So as I told you, that he might not have been a very good student, but if this kind of student is nurtured, if this kind of student is mentored, then he can become a good experimental physicist because he exhibited scientific temper. And this is something which happened in our BSc nursing class. Our colleagues at IGNOU would be knowing that BSc nursing is a very coveted program. Every year we can admit only 30 students and they have to perform many experiments. I remember when I had first gone to elaborate and tell about this program to Department of Health Sciences in Kolkata, the minister told me that I am not going to take injection from a nurse who has got trained in IGNOU, because how can you teach a nurse to push injection? And then when I opened the gamut of all the kind of experimental activities they would be doing, practical activities they would be doing, there is rural health nursing, primary health nursing, medical surgical nursing, psychiatry nursing, nursing administration, pediatric nursing, nutrition and dietetics practical, and 4 cases of science practical, that applied science, that is physics, chemistry, life sciences, and physiology. So then he, of course, was little taken aback, and then he gave me a very patient hearing. Now, in one such case of holding their practicals, as you know, that experiments are very set up in any college laboratory. So wherever we had gone, we could set up other experiments, but this was not readily available. So I, with one of my fellow teachers there, we took some corks. And pressed them with the help of nails on a board, which we could erect vertically. And then above the cords, we could make a string pass, and there were weights in the weight boxes. So it was not difficult to make arrangement for P, Q, and R. So with these strings, we could, within 10 to 15 minutes, we made that arrangement, and we were feeling quite elated. I was about 30 years younger at that time, and so we were basking in the kind of a pseudo pride that they were saying that this experiment cannot be set up, but we did it in no time. And when I was basking in this pseudo glory, I could listen to the nursing students whisper at my back that, see, this arrangement is used for giving traction to an orthopedic patient. Believe me, I never had felt so ashamed in my life. I know the theory of parallelogram law of forces. I know its experimental setup, but I do not know its practical application. Whereas those nursing students who have not studied science in their basic courses, they are non-science students, but they know that this arrangement is used for giving traction. And that's why this is, and then only I realized that why this experiment was chosen, why this was one of the experiments to be done by them. Because this is used, this particular arrangement is used for giving traction to the orthopedic patients. Believe me, I had never felt so ashamed in life. So, and then I realized that science triumphs. The impact of science and technology on society can be felt when it benefits the common man. You can see the common man of R.K. Lakshman, and this is where science triumphs. It should impact the society so that we can feel the benefits of science. Another incident I'll narrate, I normally fall back on real life experiences. IGNOU had launched a program, Diploma in Primary Education, and for that, in order to have infrastructure of study centers, I had to go to several primary schools. And in one such school, perhaps in second standard or third standard, when I had gone there, the teacher was teaching subtraction. And the particular exercise I remember, 18 was being subtracted from 45. And I could make out that in the previous class, when the teacher had taught subtraction, well, the quantity to be subtracted was less. In fact, here it is also less, but the number at the units place is not less. 8 is more than 5. Whereas in the previous class, they have learned that I could make out that kind of subtraction where things are simple. Now she has to take up a case where the number in the units place is greater than the number in the units place of the other number. 8 is greater than 5. So she said that you borrow 1 from 4 and make 5 15. You borrow 1 from 4 and make 5 15. Subtract 8 from 15, the result will be 7. And since you have borrowed 1 from 4, it is no longer 4, it has become 3. So 3 minus 1. So the tens place is 2 and the result is 27. Fantastic. Very apt explanation, very apt analysis. But you'll be surprised to know that one young girl sitting at the back stood up and said, now this particular teacher was also taking their Bangla class or whatever other classes. There is only one teacher, that is the state of affairs in the rural schools in the country. And she said that, but they don't address us madam, they said দিদিমণি আপনি তো আগের ক্লাসে বলেছেন ধার নেওয়া পাপ. In the previous class you have said that taking loan is a crime, so why are you asking to take loan? See, this sort of questions appear at students' mind and we should not underestimate them. The teacher was perplexed, she was nonplussed what to respond. And if you believe me, from then onwards, I don't use credit cards. I use debit cards, but I don't use credit cards. That was a lesson for me. When that young girl said that taking loan is a sin. Madam, in the previous class you said, in the Bangla class you said that taking loan is a sin. So why should I take loan? Of course, the context was different and she could be explained. But her realization and how it has got impregnated in her mind was really marvelous and remarkable, and that taught me a lesson. So, and the other important lesson is that not to underestimate our learners. We should never underestimate our learners, and these are the takeaways for the role of the teacher and the taught. Now, first is that you have to de-intimidate learners about the process of learning. The other day also, I was trying to make this remark, and not only the learners, even the teachers. Otherwise, they will never question. In fact, the learners feel intimidated when the teacher asks a question. Every time, teachers will definitely start with a very simple question. Suppose the teacher, all of you would be trying to explain a very complex thing. So you will start with a very simple question, but the learner will not believe, at the back of his or her mind will be that the teacher is asking me a difficult question, and it's better to remain mum. If I do not answer, fine. If I answer, then I'll be considered a fool. So how can you promote critical thinking? I'm falling back on the recommendations of the National Education Policy 2020. How can you facilitate experiential learning? So the first thing is to de-intimidate the learner. Be fearless. Don't be afraid to respond. And go beyond the textbook to learn. You go beyond the textbook to learn. And as regards science, you have integration of science with other disciplines. Science can be very well integrated with other disciplines. Like if you go to if you go to Taj Mahal and you see the architecture and you try to find out the different kind of symmetries which you come across when you see that kind of a structure, there is mathematics all around. If you observe the, say, the water cycle. Now, in our childhood, we knew that if we can draw that diagram very well, that water is evaporating from the pond, it is becoming cloud, and at a later stage, it gets converted into rain. Fine, but if I can draw well, that is one of my proficiencies. But as regards understanding the process of the water cycle, well, I can take him to particularly say in a village, we can take him to a pond during the summer, and due to the scorching rays of the summer, well, the water might not exist in that pond. And then when the rainy season comes, well, the pond gets filled with water. So it may not be doing everything on the blackboard. You take them beyond the classroom and make them experience how the water cycle acts. Same thing can be done with natural phenomena. So the role of the teacher and the taught, not only the teacher and the taught have to be redefined, particularly taking cue from the National Education Policy 2020. And the most crucial thing is the aspect of critical thinking, and that can only develop, or that can only be developed if you de-intimidate the learner. And these are the curricular options. Art integration in science and mathematics. I told about total solar eclipse. Now, if you take, you can take, say during the partial eclipse, I could have brought that photograph. Say the kind of utensils which you use to sprinkle water, or you take out. You have boiled rice, and in order to make the starch move out, you use a particular kind of a utensil where you have holes. So if you observe the eclipse sun under the holes, you'll see a series of crescent sun, and that forms a very nice kind of an art. So different forms, rainbow, colors, they can create art integration, and you can make art integration in science. You give them projects on development of scientific temper, and again, while giving projects, you have to sensitize them that the projects have to be done by themselves. It is nothing to get scared of. You should not run to the place where ready-made projects are available. That is again lack of scientific temper. So you give them projects on development of scientific temper. Like IGNU had started way back during the days of its inception, a foundation course in science and technology for all, even for the students of commerce, arts, and so on and so forth. So a foundation course in science and technology for all. Well, you did not know, a student of arts did not know about the law of falling bodies of Galileo, but the struggle which he faced in his life, the objection which he faced from the church, and in the even in such a situation of objection, how he could stand tall with his observation and could establish the Copernican thought of the universe. This can be a matter of humanities. So a foundation course in science and technology for all, and then teaching of science through vernacular medium, which was the dream of Professor Ck Ghosh. So these are certain curricular options which came to my mind and I thought of sharing with you. And these, I have listed certain issues for dissemination, which was also very much expressed by Professor Singhvi during his talk. Upholding of scientific integrity, fearlessness, open-mindedness, and this is about performance of experiments. When you need to have that element of scientific integrity, fearlessness, open-mindedness, resilience, tolerance, and values of scientific humanism. We have shown a lot of resilience during this pandemic. We have shown a lot of tolerance, a lot of patience during this pandemic. Well, Dr. Singhvi was talking about the trust deficit. Well, trust deficit was there. And at the same time, we were hoping against hope, inoculation will be done. Well, there will be odd cases like Novak Djokovic, who will not be taking the vaccine. But then you see of the entire community, and and how we have been able to rise to occasion. Value of scientific humanism. And warm up and will blame something created. But it is a choice of humanism, it is a choice of because politics, science and technology are secular. Nothing can be more secular than science and technology, and we are driven by them because we are the drivers of change. Science and technology has in it the element of secularism. It is not communal. Science and technology is a secular. And you can see from this example in 2011 when we had won the Cricket World Cup, MS Dhoni, the captain, was a Hindu. Jahir Khan and Harbhajan Singh, the main strike bowlers, was a Muslim and a Sikh, and all playing under Gary Kirsten, a Christian. So let us remember that if we can play together, we can also stay together. And this particular statement which I have made, or this particular kind of thought, is also a reflection of scientific temper. See what happened in the first UPA government. I'm not talking about any political thought or political belief, but the name in a country where majority is Hindu, the name of a Sikh president was proposed by a Christian lady, and the oath of office was delivered by a Muslim president. So that is India, and that binds us, the humanism, and there is an element of scientific temper attached with it. So talking about the role of the teacher, the role of the academic institutions, because those are the places, those are the portals where the seed of scientific temper has to be sown, and there everybody has a responsibility. The biggest responsibility is with the teacher, then of course with the taught, and of course the guardians, and even the non-teaching staff and every stakeholder. And we should know that we are going to face the era of era. I call it era of era. The first era has the usual connotation, and the second era is an acronym. E stands for enrollment, R stands for retention, and A stands for achievement. As we always boast that in IGNOU enrollment is rising, it was such and such. Last year, so many more students have come, but we have to worry also about retaining the student. And once you are able to retain the student, you have to make them achieve. And in order to make the students achieve, I'm talking about all the students, not only the students of science, but every other discipline, we have to define the needs of the student. Defining the needs of the student, and there comes science. Science, agriculture, whatever. Your art of defining has to be developed, and that should follow. Defining the need of the student, you are teaching the tenets of science. And there I remember this particular occasion when Pitama Bhishma was talking to Yudhishthir before parting away with his life. Mortal bliss about deciding about the time to depart from this world. And he was talking to the Pandavas about post-war government Hastinapur, his so cradle of childhood Hastinapur, and he was talking about the post-war governance, and he was primarily talking to Yudhishthir lying on the bed of arrows. And what he said can be gisted in these words: not to resist, not to desist, but to persist. So if you read between the lines, it has every reflection of scientific temper. Not to resist, not to desist, but to persist. Not to deny, not to defy, but to define. Again, a great reflection of scientific temper. So let all our journey of developing scientific temper, particularly to our students and to all concerned, be a journey of defining their needs with a proper perspective. Thank you very much for giving me a patient hearing. If there are any questions, I'll be very happy. I don't know whether I've exceeded
Excellent
the time.
talk. It has always been very fascinating to listen to you, because you always add value to your talk with lot of information, besides information, real life examples. And I liked your slides on the conversation or the fight between the question and the answer, about your visit um, to the Ravindra Ashram, and talking about seeing is believing, the message about seeing is believing. Indeed, it was wonderful, very fascinating, very interesting. Your talk has given rise to many questions. I have noted down at least a dozen questions which I have noted down from students. It is in front of me, and I'm sure the participants online would also like to speak to you. So I call upon the participants to ask your questions. Please raise your hand, and one by one you can.
We have a very eminent scientist, Professor G.P. Dash, among the
I welcome
audience.
Dr. G.P. Das, who is with us. Welcome to the program, sir. And all others, because the videos are not on, so we are not able to see everyone. But I welcome each one of you. There are eminent persons, and also our colleagues from IGNOU and outside, and our students. Also, we have our counselors and many of our evaluators with us. Welcome. I welcome each one again. So I request our participants to one by one raise your hands, and maybe we can take questions. Take questions from there. In the meanwhile, maybe I'll continue to take some questions. I'll take some questions, and in the meantime, people can think of their questions and speak to you. So there's a question that how convinced are you of observing one day in a year as Science Day?
No, this is an occasion. In fact, every day cannot be a National Science Day. You have to make room for other occasions also, and that is perhaps again a reflection of scientific temper, because people have their work. This is a sort of a reminder. This is say Tagore anniversary. Now, in every occasion we keep singing songs of Tagore, reciting Tagore, but we observe his birthday on a particular day. So I think we restrict ourselves to one day. You observe that, but whatever lessons we learn or whatever objectives we define, I'm using the word define on National Science Day, we try to perform that every day. It's not that we perform it only on 28th of February.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Rightly said, because from your lecture also, the messages, the takeaways, and the food for thought that we got. And as such also, the Science Day, the ideas that it brings in our mind, these are to be taken care of each day. And of course, we observe one day to at least set, sir. If anybody has questions, please stop me.
Dr. Dash wants to ask a question.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please, Doctor.
As usual, I mean, it was a great talk, and I have listened to Dr. Ghosh's talk n number of times. But as usual, it was a absolutely fascinating talk. Now, I have got one sort of query and one comment. Now, the query which I have to Dr. Ghosh is that you mentioned about the Einstein's general theory of relativity. In that context, you mentioned about the total solar eclipse of 1915. 1915. Yeah. Now, I'm just curious to know. So, I mean, suppose you make a Gedanken experiment that if the total solar eclipse would not have taken place in 1915, could that have influenced the Nobel Prize of?
That's a very critical question. But again, as I told that we should develop questioning skills, I should definitely appreciate this question. First of all, one doubt got raised after you uttered that question. The general theory of relativity came in 1915, but perhaps Eddington's experiment was in 1917. Now, what I meant to say is that when I was while delivering the talk, I was more interested to sensitize people about the cosmic spectacle, and so I wanted to say that leaving apart everything. In fact, you study solar prominences, solar spectrum, and the most important experiment that is performed, and you might be knowing that even after Eddington's time, every time a total solar eclipse has taken place, our own friends, Narayan Rana's determining the solar diameter. So many fascinating experiments and everything happening with that 1 to 2 minute time. I mean, it's so crucial and so much of precision. And every time this experiment of verification of general theory of relativity, that is bending of the light ray from the star, has taken place, and with increasing order of precision, it has been able to prove the general theory of relativity. But leaving aside, even despite that, you leave aside all those experiments and just see what is happening.
The cosmic,
the cosmic spectacle. This is what I wanted to convey.
Absolutely.
Now, this is a very interesting question. If the total solar eclipse had not happened, what would have happened to Einstein? And we all know, it's an open secret, that his Nobel Prize in the year 1921 was given for the photoelectric experiment. And he could have been given 3-4 Nobel Prizes even due to the molecular diameter or whatever experiments which he did. But then there was, contradictory thoughts about relativity, and particularly because he was a Jew, they did not want to spell out that the Nobel Prize is given for relativity. He wants that if my theory of relativity be proven successful, then Germany will call me a German and France will declare that I'm a citizen of the world. See the pattern, and Germany will tell that I'm a Jew.
Okay. May I come to the comment? The comment is about the laboratory notebook that you mentioned, and that's really extremely relevant, that whatever you said about the laboratory notebook. And my comment is that way back in 1928, there were laboratory notebooks kept diligently by K.S. Krishnan, C.V. Raman's student. And those pages of the notebooks of K.S. Krishnan was very meticulously kept by Royal Society. And there, at every page of the notebook, Krishnan writes about his experiments, and he writes on 27th of February that he could not come to cultivation of science because of some passing away of one of his some relatives. And on 28th, he came to cultivation of science a little bit late. And when he came to cultivation of science, his professor told him that I have done the experiment and I have got the spectrum. Now, and there he writes what is the spectrum that he and his professor saw, which ultimately was published on 16th of March 1928. But that diary written by K.S. Krishnan, which is in the laboratory notebook, I'm calling it a diary, but actually it is a laboratory notebook. That was actually the origin of 28th of February to be declared as the National Science Day. So I just wanted to make the comment because you very nicely pointed out about the importance of laboratory notebook, and this makes me remember about this thing, this laboratory notebook by K.S. Krishnan. So this is just a comment I would like to make.
I was not aware of it, and the phenomenal contribution of K.S. Krishnan in Raman effect will study and
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
should know about
absolutely.
it.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting interaction between Professor G.P. Das and Dr. Ghosh. Very interesting, and a lot of information has come out. And I'm sure everybody has, it was of interest to everyone. I can see Dr. Sanjeev Kumar has raised his hand.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to make some observations here. That as usual, listening to Professor Ghosh is a pleasure actually, and no one has to have any doubts on that. But actually, I tend to agree with what he said, and my personal experience of teaching at a college for about 20 years. It is that we teachers have to take the blame of killing this scientific temper, because we ensure that whatever little the child wants to know, we kill that instinct completely. And particularly in the laboratory part, what we observe, what we actually as teachers want is that the student just follows a list of steps to be done, and he just does performs an action and goes off. Doesn't bother anything about it, and we really kill that scientific temper, because I've seen number of children who work very good. They wanted to learn, but my colleagues and sometimes even we also contributed in that we ensured that they don't come forward with any, they don't disturb us. So but that's what observation I wanted to make here. That is, we as teachers have to take this blame. Probably the reason for that is teaching, as I perceive, is no more a profession. It has become a job. Since it has become a job, it has its own ills there. So we just do it as a matter of routine, and we don't really profess within the true sense of it. That's one observation I wanted to make here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for that comment. Dr. Manoj Dash would like to ask something. I think he raised his hand in between. Dr. Dash? If no, there's another question from one of our colleagues, Mr. Ashish Kumar. He says, how can scientific temper be used to dispel the superstitious beliefs in rural India, where everything related to science is still believed to be magical?
Now, this again cannot be done in a single day. This cannot be done in a single day. You have to take a concerted effort. First of all, the scientific explanation of the things, we should be very much sure about them, that what we are explaining, and we have to try and explain them in their own terms. But when I'm saying this, I'm not just saying it theoretically. I have practiced a little bit. I'll take just 2 minutes to share one of our experiences. From our college, we used to be taken to a rural site for some sort of social work from NSS, National Social Service, during our vacations. And monsoon, and we were I remember during winter when creating that road, and during the evening of villagers were great listeners. And it would bring tears to your eyes. Some of them had left studies for all sorts of odd reasons, and they would be very keen to listen to you. And naturally, within those darkness of the night, you are talking to them. Is what you can talk about. So, and you with a lantern glowing, and so I used to tell them stories from the lives of scientists and all. And one of them asked that every day you tell us about scientific experiments, scientific thoughts, but you have never shown so. But somehow it was winter time, sky was clear, and I thought, I was completely perplexed what to do. You don't need, I told them the story about a laboratory assistant. I cooked a kind of a story that we had gone to the college after the vacation, but the laboratory assistant had not come, and so the laboratory could not be opened because we did not have the key. And so how to perform experiment if the laboratory can't be opened? But see, here is a laboratory where you don't need a key to open. It is always available to you, but the sky will have to be clear. And then I showed them about some movements, particularly what happens about around the polar axis, and so, and how these celestial bodies move. And then I could excite them by saying that to astrology, but then I could tell the astronomy part of it, and this related to astrology, certain things. So, but it has to be a concerted effort. More than the science, it is the logistics which have to take care. The answer to that question raised is how to do that is to organize the logistics in a very meticulous manner, and you have to be with them. In fact, I was talking about the total solar eclipse of 16th February 1980. Professor Dash will remember, he was with us. On 15th February, that is the day prior to that, we found that in the evening we had gone to Puri, because Puri was on the track of the totality, and we were setting up the devices which will be used on the next day. So we were trying to set up the inclination of the telescope, because the inclination of the sun rays, etc., will be the same on the next day. And after we have done that, because there were announcement by the media that there will be high tide, there can be devastation, you should not go to the sea. These were all being done in Udia, but we could make out that phenomena. You come with us, we will show you how interesting it is to see the eclipse. And one of them was so angry. He got so angry with me, he was almost going to give me a fist, because the timing of the eclipse coincided with the lunchtime of Lord Jagannath. And as per their belief, our so he's saying nothing would happen, where in lunch would not happen and Lord Jagannath will remain, better be careful. So I was threatened. So you have to make some preparation. If you start just like that and saying like that, then it would not happen. You have to make a kind of a preparation and then launch the program. So more than with your scientific explanations, you have to be ready with the logistics and plan it carefully. And it has to be an event. It just cannot happen on a single day. Let us try something like that. We can plan and we can take up village after village.
Bring some change. Yes, true, rightly said.
Dr. Bhattacharya perhaps likes to make some comment.
Professor Bhattacharya?
Okay. Well, Dr. Ck Ghosh is well known for his presentations, and whenever I get an opportunity, I do not like to miss it, and that's how I am here today. Well, it was a wonderful talk, and whatever, in fact, there's nothing else he has left for questioning him and getting answers from him. Yet, a simple sentence was striking me that yes, seeing is believing. That's true. But my question is whether science is always evidence based or it's a way of thinking in a scientific manner.
Now, when I say seeing is believing, again, I'm not referring to hard science. I'm not always referring to hard science. But of course, it started that particular statement of Galileo that yet it moves, which he had to say. Observed for days together, for even together. So that is what he had seen. But for any other thing where I'm applying my scientific temper, like say they were talking about situation in village, to stop child marriage in a village, to abolish caste system in a village. So there you perhaps cannot relate evidence, but you can say about things like Swami Vivekananda was trying hookahs kept in the chamber of his father. His father was an advocate, so different kind of people would be coming, and he was seen using. His father asked him, Vishwanath Datta, that what are you doing? And he said that I'm seeing how I lose my caste, how I lose can say that all sorts of things with which you relate scientific temper and for which you use scientific temper as a vehicle to stop such things happen. Well, these are all evidence based.
NEP 2020, education system need to be recasted totally. Of course, now we have said that 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4
Right.
teachers are coming. And there itself we need to inculcate those values which will encourage children or the people around us, children around us, to continuously ask questions, which normally teachers don't do.
Again, it will require a preparation. Well, most of these things are known by us. The science of it, the explanations, etc., are known. There are a lot many books also. Several books by Vigyan Prashad, several books by National Book Trust. But we have to create. We have to plan this thing properly. It is kind of a launching scheme, and it has to be planned meticulously. We have to spend time and energy on that. Dr. Seema Vats, I think she is the president of IIPT of RC Delhi. She is raising hand.
Yeah, sir. It's always a pleasure listening to you, and I must congratulate you for.
Oh, thank you.
Sir, actually, I have one comment and one observation. Rather, it's not even observation or comment. I'll just say I have some views that we always talk about, we should teach students and this. Now, since I am teaching in undergraduate college of University of Delhi, and in practical classes, what I have encountered a problem is this, that not all the students are interested in physics. Even if you try to have ways out that how do you measure, even if I take a simple pendulum case and we raise a questions like this, that you are taking a to and fro motion and you are finding the acceleration due to gravity from this motion. So you should ignite your minds why the scientist has thought of designing this experiment. But now I just say that we can find a way out, that we need not, we'll start with a wider angle, that we cater to all the students. Like if there are 40 students, we should generate ideas, but we should be satisfied that even if 5 students are interested in our way of thinking, and if they can do a practical, then we can give them an extension of that practical. We might say that replace the thread with the metal wire, and fill the bulb with water or maybe some hole. This way we can devise the things for students who are interested, and those who are not interested, we can guide them in their way. About this thing, that they can do this. Even simpler thing can be, like we have different examples of J.C. Bose, sir, and we have Radhanath Sikdar. They have used trigonometry in actually, Radhanath Sikdar is a renowned Bengali name, in which he has actually measured the height of mountain. Yeah. And just by simple trigonometry and all these things. So if we can reproduce those experiments, and even J.C. Bose crescograph, that's a complicated experiment. He magnified this plant's attraction and that how do they grow. So even if we start just reproducing the experiments done by our scientists, I think we are teaching ourselves how to do this experiment. We have a student batches in 15 or teachers batches. We can work together for 2 or 3 days. This is how I think the things can move in a forward direction.
That's a great idea. Particularly, I remember there is one Barakpur Trunk Road in Kolkata, BT Road, and there is something called Tala Bridge, which is under repair these days, and you have a hard time crossing the alternate route.
Yeah.
But then so far it never struck me. Only recently, about a year or a couple of years back, when this mess had happened and I had to wait there for some time, and it struck me a tower there, and there it is written the Great Trigonometrical Survey. It is again giving me goosebumps. So that is where from Raghunath Shikdar's activity had started for measuring the height of Mount Everest. So if such experiments can be replicated, nothing like that is yeah, see, Jesse Bose was a polymath, not only crystallograph, what he did about this electromagnetic wave
Yes,
propagation.
sir. Yeah.
So he was not that much interested in getting it patented. Even if you read his Bengali literature, Bhakta Abhyakta, but he has mastered everything whichever he had touched. And so, see, yes, Marconi did it transatlantic, and he got the credit for that. I have no regrets for that. He did it across 7 or 8 rooms at Presidency College, from his room to Acharya P.C. Roy's room. So he had that pleasure. But the way he did that thing, that can be replicated and shown to the student, and they can be asked to have a try on the area which we have given. Let us see if the IIPTs
Yes,
IIPT Delhi.
Adi's son.
Professor Dash had been your counterpart about a month back. He was the president of IIPT RC 15, and you are the president
Okay.
of IIPT RC 1 now.
Yes. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, thank you, thank
Welcome.
you. I completely echo the same feeling as what Dr. Ghosh said. Yes, please.
Thank you.
That the Galena detector time for the electromagnetic wave detection. At that time, nobody could ever detector that Jesse Bose had used. What is a semiconductor detector? Because the word 97,
Yes.
and at that time he made the detector, which was Galena detector, and the word semiconductor was known 50 years later. So that shows how what is the definition of a genius. I mean, if these things we can imbibe into our students, as Professor Seema was mentioning, I think it is great. And I totally agree with you and also with Dr. Ghosh. There's just a comment.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Professor Seema, for
Thanks.
sharing your
I,
idea and for the
I,
interaction.
benefit voluntary organization promoting physics and physics education throughout the country. Of course, this is not the forum to talk about it, but since I made references and I was using the abbreviation, I thought I should tell.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank
Dr.
you.
Ghosh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Lot of information being shared on this platform today. So this is International Science Day. On from anyone? Dr. Dash has written a question. Would you like to say a few words before we close? Dr. O.P. Sharma.
new education policy, it is much required. Sir, thank you so much on behalf of IGNOU Regional Center Bhopal, NCIDE, and all our students and all our regional center. Thank you so much, sir. It was really enthralling experience to listen to you. I would like to thank from my core of heart to Professor Dr. O.P. Sharma, sir, for his guidance for organizing this program and for taking initiative to stream this program live on YouTube so that all the students can see the lecture and can be beneficial from the lecture. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to thank Dr. U.C. Pandey, sir, Senior Regional Director now in RSD, for taking this initiative to celebrate the National Science Day in such a manner. I would also additional directors who have joined this program. Last but not least, I would like to thank Dr. Binny Toms, Regional Director, IGNOU, and all the guests who have joined, the senior scientist, Professor J.P. from our resource person. Thank you. Thank you. Question, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity.
Now, sir.
I think there is no link with the head.